Alright, this is a commentary for Snatcher, the video game Policenauts, not Snatcher. But this commentary is also going to be including a pitch to remake Snatcher and remake this game Policenauts, since there's a craze for remaking games now because of Resident Evil 2 remake taking off, the Resident Evil 2 remake taking off, and the remake in Resident Evil 4, which I totally think is ridiculous. It's like I can understand why they remade Resident Evil 1 because Shinji Mikami, there was things that he didn't get to incorporate in the original due to the limitations of the hardware at the time, and the systems in the following generation after the PS1 and 64 Saturn era could incorporate the ideas he wanted. And with Resident Evil 2, there was a demand for that remake, and there was a demand for it, and the fact that you could play with updated gameplay and just somewhat of a different take of Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 3 remake was what it was, and the Resident Evil 4 remake, it's like, why don't you remake Code Veronica? We're not going to talk about that. We're talking about, let's pitch. They're even doing the Last of Us remake, which makes no sense. The Last of Us came out in 2013. It's 2022, and we're remaking games from nearly 10 years ago, that still have a decent control scheme. Same with Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 still has a pretty good control scheme. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about pitching this. And there is a demand for these games. There is. But as you see the opening tells you about the main character, Jonathan Ingram, which is voiced by Hideyuki Tanaka. And his accident he had in space, and he was cryogenically frozen and was found 25 years later, not aged a day, and his body was preserved. And that's an interesting concept because he also had a wife, and she moved on and had a kid and was older, and his friends were older. He still looked like he was 30, even though he was really in his 50s. So technically he's a guy from the previous generation, but looks like he belongs in he's from a previous generation, but looks like he belongs in the current generation in this game. I'm gonna turn this up. It's pretty catchy tune. Do, 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 do. 2040, holy shit, that's gonna be 18 years from now. And this game was ahead of its time. There's so much stuff in it. That deals with the ideas of drugs and trafficking. There's so much stuff is ahead of its time in this game. And yes, this is a Sega Saturn fan translation. This was never released in the United States. I've heard that Konami just could not make it have English actors syncing up with the lip movement in the game. I really think it was the content of trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and probably some of the violence and content in the game that wouldn't, in 1996, 97, America was more, conservative-minded on a lot of stuff. Not that that's a bad thing in some respects. It's just I just believe in entertainment most of the time just being uncut. I can understand if it had like very crazy shit in it. But here, the crazy shit in it, like if killing kids, I couldn't stand for that. I couldn't do that. I don't like that. And having a game where you just go around killing innocent people, I wouldn't do that. I mean, some people might enjoy that, but I wouldn't. And I mean, it would, just to say, it'd be very hard for me to bitch to get me to want to ban something in a form of entertainment. It'd be really hard. And yep, here we got our main character, Jonathan Ingram, who has a cigarette in his mouth. Which another cool thing is he mentions he doesn't like the electronic cigarettes, which this was kind of cool. This was in 1996. Actually, 94, the PC-88 whatever version was released first. It was a PC version released first, and then a 3DO version was released, and then the PS1 and Saturn. It never got ported over here, but this was part of Hideo Kojima wanting to be pretty much a film director. Which, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big Hideo Kojima fan. I'm not. I never could get in the Metal Gear Solid, none of the games. But this game right here, and Snatcher, these were among his best. The only thing I hated about was there's so many, to progress, you have to click on so much stuff right to small detail. And you have to check it like 2 or 3 times. And then sometimes you gotta do another action and check it again. That and the shooting sequences are pretty shitty with a controller. With the gun, because you're aiming at the screen, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. It's a minimal improvement. Because I have one of those dual things that have a dual plug-in, can do PS1 and Sega Saturn. Oh, and they totally borrowed. Not that it was not that I had anything against it. They totally borrowed from Lethal Weapon. That music, even. If you heard it, the music, they totally borrow from Lethal Weapon. But yeah, there's him and his partner Ed Brown, who's, when you get to the next part of the game, or the next section after this, when you get to the Beyond, yeah, he's aged too, because of being cryosleep for 25 years. And that weighs heavily on him, because he was gone for 25 years. He was a cryosleep, and she had moved on, and it's a very heavy thing for him. So they do. So I like that. They add layers to it. I mean, this was around the time of when movies were trying to incorporate and be like a movie, you know, which you got that a lot during the, which was really big in the Sega CD at the time, beforehand, for better or worse. for better or worse, they at least attempted it. And as you see, yeah, he's working as a private investigator, and got a he's he's working the cases, and there's kidnappings in the area. Which, when you get towards the end, you'll find out what's going on. Which, if you've not played this game, I would suggest to do it somehow. I mean, there's fan translations on the PlayStation and Saturn. I guess if you have an emulator, or if you've got one of those pseudo Saturn cartridges and you can get your hands on a Saturn, that's the thing. Getting your hands on a Sega Saturn is the easy part. The games have went up tremendously. I mean, Shinobi Legions, for example, when I bought that in 2009, it was probably a $10 or $15 game. Now they want like almost, I think, $110. I'm not for sure, but it's went up in price. Anything Saturn will go up. It's up in price and unaffordable unless you can get a repro and get a pseudo Saturn cart that can bypass the detection and can play backup games, because the Saturn had good copy protection, unlike the Dreamcast. Which, shoot, I can buy a burnt game for the Dreamcast and it'll fire right up like Resident Evil 3 on Dreamcast. Will fire right up with Resident Evil Code Veronica X on Dreamcast. It's a repro because the Code Veronica X was not released in the United States, because when Code Veronica X was released in 2001, the Saturn was discontinued. Thank you very much, Peter Moore. Not that what's his name, Bernie Stoller, who recently died, not on Saturday or something like that. So it was sometime around the weekend, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I don't know what he died of, but yeah, he didn't help coming in and immediately announcing the Saturn's discontinued, and he burned all the consumers and basically ticked off all the retailers what was left. And basically saying he didn't want RPG games, and I'm going on about Bernie Stoller. I'm talking about this game. I need to talk about this game because it's on the Saturn. And mostly I'm just clicking around because you have to click on stuff and read. That's the problem. That's the only problem I have with this, and little shooting sections. Other than that, but with the help of the gun con, not the gun con, whatever, the Saturn Stunner, whatever, I have one that has a dual plug-in that did both, like I said. It can do PS1 and Saturn. Yeah, they were basically, what he was doing was a part of a group of cops that were going to help colonize space, and there's an accident, as you saw. Yeah. And basically, he's looking at an article about Beyond, which is the colony that was built, and that his ex-wife lives on, his friends live on now. I mean, just an interesting thing. I mean, how crazy would it be to be put in a cryo sleep for 25 years, and then you're brought in a different era, and you're in a different era, and people probably are dead, or they're older, and it's crazy. And if this was real, oh my God, that would crush somebody. Literally, it'd break their heart, because they've moved on. They're old. You're from their era, yet you look like you belong in the current era in this game. I'm repeating myself, I know. Yeah, you never know who's going to show up. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he still has his too. Yeah, look at the photo. It's like, yeah, I already looked at that. Yeah, you have to look at everything like 2 or 3 times to get, and then look at different stuff, and even the most minute detail. I mean, just like in the part where you go to the space museum in this game, and I was looking around for almost 50 minutes, and it was this one little plaque in this area that I did not take a look at. So that's why some of this is just dragging. But I'll get to why Snatcher deserves a remake and why Policenauts deserves a remake as this commentary goes on. Because there is probably interest in this game, and it's not an accessible game. I mean, yeah, you get a Sega CD for 80, 100, 120 bucks maybe. You could probably get one and try to repair it, and it could work great. But when your only games are going to be the garbage games, well, of course, there's no reason to do it unless you get a repro. Which again, the Sega CD has horrible copy protection because my copy of Android is sold as a backup copy. My copy of Demolition Man on Sega CD is a backup copy. Did you? Now, my copy of Snatcher is a legit copy, but I got that as a gift back when the game was 140, 150 bucks. It was a Christmas gift. Originally, I had no. I wanted it. It was almost games I wanted, but 140, 150 bucks was too steep. Now, in comparison, 140, 150 bucks is pretty cheap compared to the 1,100 to 14,000, 1,400 bucks they want for it. And there's people who want to play Snatcher, I guarantee you. And the only way to do it is get a Sega CD and buy a backup copy of it. Oh, he's getting answer machine messages. When's somebody gonna call me the real case? Department of Water and Power regarding your water bill, or maybe if you gave me something considering it was his final notice. Maybe if you gave me something I could actually drink. I'm sorry. Maybe if you gave me something I could actually drink. Yeah, I'm some lame-o. Tell me something new. Let's see what the next. Oh, threats over the answer machine. You could with a remake of this game, you could actually make it Twitter and people making threats over Twitter. Still no cases. The signboard's got an extra pair of legs. It's wrong numbers, and you could make it the remake threatening tweets or threatening Facebook messages or something. That'd be in it. That you could do that in a remake. But yeah, I've got 45 seconds left on this commentary. I'm sure this is probably some of the commentary you listen to. I'm talking about something different, and there's a totally different thing going on in the game, and I apologize for that. And we'll continue this with a second part, or maybe I'll just do this all together, the commentary. Well, not all together, but have longer than 21 minutes. And I save there, and I'll come back with the follow-up. Okay, I'm going to continue this message, this commentary. And it's like, yeah, I'm clicking on everything. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to click around because mostly what I was doing was, yeah, I was just having to click on everything to see if I could progress to get to the next scene. And I'm just going to talk about pitching a Snatcher remake. It could be done, and you could probably sell for 20 to $30, and do a Policenauts remake, or sell it in a bundle for $50 as a download. Yeah, you could download it, and it could be a remake in better graphics. The action scenes, for example, don't do it where you gotta move across there. Make it first person, and later on you do get upgraded weapons, like you get a shotgun or something, or a type of, or some kind of like automatic, like a machine gun, some kind of machine gun. Yeah, did I already look at that? Yeah, he's talking about, he's Gates Becker, and he was from Scotland Yard, Salvatore Toscani, or whatever his name was in this game. He was from New York, and of course, him and Ed Brown are LA, and Joseph Sudoku Tagawa was a cop in Japan. But I'm gonna get to the part pitching a Snatcher remake here. But this is the next scene where he gets a client, which is, as you'll see, it's his wife, Lorraine, his ex-wife Lorraine, and basically his case is going to be investigating the disappearance of her husband, Kenzo. Yeah. And it's very hard for both of them, both Lorraine and Jonathan Ingram, because both of them have been apart for 25 years while he was in cryosleep and she grew older. And he's still like 30 years old, and she's 55. And she feels bad for coming to him for help. And I mean, this game had a darker edge to it than Snatcher even. I mean, Snatcher was just a bunch of cyborgs that were trying to replacing people, that were killing people and taking their place, and were part of a conspiracy was part of a conspiracy to take over the world. That was small potatoes, something just something typical bad guy storyline in the 90s. This was a little more darker. And in some ways I thought this was better than Snatcher. But both are great games. I mean, as I was saying, like a Snatcher remake, you could make like change some story elements around, instead of dealing with the Cold War, which was a story that was still kind of fresh in the 90s. It was still fresh in people's minds, the Cold War, because the Cold War didn't end that long ago, even when Snatcher was released in the United States in 1994. And you can change the story elements around for it to be set in 2020. And the character I came up with, changed some of the characters around, like the character Jamie could have been like a scientist, worked for the CDC or something. And the character I already came up with it, like Random Hajil, or not Random Hajil, but Elijah Magdar. I'll just call him Eli Malloy, and he was in bed with with a biolab in China, and they release he's responsible for the virus. Instead of being like setting off a nuclear meltdown, it'd be a virus that kills a lot of people in China and kills a lot of people in the United States. And Gillian, Seed, and Jamie get the disease, and they're put in cryosleep to spoil. While the character Eli Malloy works on a cure. But see, so you can still keep the fact that he hates Gillian Seed, the government agent. He could be like he could be doing undercover work or something for like the CIA or something. Still do that, and he hates him because he took away what he thought was the woman entitled to. Still keep that, and then keep the idea. And then keep the idea of the Snatcher, the bounty hunter. I would just call him Hygil. or Higel Modner is what I would call him. Higel Modner is what I would call him, and you would still have you would still keep a lot of the same story. It'd just be changed. Instead of the Japanese thing, the Neo Kobe, I would set it in New York, and it would look like New York of the like the 70s and 80s. Or give it a Noir look. Give it a Noir look. Yeah, give it a Noir look, or make it look like Tim Burton's Batman or Batman Returns. Just give it a look that's creepy. Or, just give it a creepy look to the city. That's what I would do. And this happens in 2020, and so they were asleep for 50 years, I think it was, because the catastrophe on the Sega CD version of Snatcher happened in 1996. And it was used the 2040, so it was about 40 years, wasn't it? 50 years? Yeah, it was about 50 years, so go from 2022 to the early to mid 2070s. It takes place in that era, the game. Because they would have been both put cryoslsleep in 2020, and then it would be about 50 years later they're found and discovered. And you'd still keep the amnesia aspect. You would just do things a lot differently. Because I'm pitching a Snatcher remake. This would be, and Snatcher, yeah, for the time, the voice acting was great for the time. For 1994, I mean, there was some horrible voice acting during that time. Even Resident Evil 1, which came out a couple years after that, over a year after that, after Snatcher, a year or two after that, still had some bad voice acting. But that was on the fault of the director, The Snatcher, for example, had pretty good, great voice acting for the time. But I would say, you get some good voice actors and I'm just thinking like Troy Baker, I believe, would do a good job voicing Gillian Seed, or I even said Nick Apostolidis, who voiced Leon Scott Kennedy in the Resident Evil 2 remake, would do a good job voicing Gillian Seed. And I even said, and this is mainly these suggestions are coming from me because I love the Resident Evil series. I thought DC Douglas would do a good job voicing the Eli Malloy character. And since the character, because in the original game, the bounty hunter, Random Hagiel was based off the younger version of the Elijah Modnar character. So the Hagiel Modners, he would also voice Hagiel Modnar to DC Douglas. I mean, the Chief, I don't know who you would get to voice the Chief. I mean, I guess get the same guy who voiced the Chief in Resident Evil 2 remake. Again, I'm a fan of those games. I'm just going to gear towards them. I mean, just get some good voice actors. And like I said, the setting, the look of the game would be like a noir setting, or a New York in the like the 70s and 80s, or even like a Tim Burton Batman look. Just something to make it stand out, because they already had like the Blade Runner look for the original in the Snatcher. And like I said, the action scenes, you would not use it since light guns are the way the way of the dodo. I mean, unless you would have had a like a what is that the shit. I forgot the motion controls. Unless you incorporate motion controls in like the PlayStation Move or the Wii or whatever had. Don't do that. Just make a first-person shooter section. And then eventually at the end, yeah, you go in with guns ablaze and you have a secondary weapon like in Rise of the Dragon, which I recently played. You get a rifle later on. And you can use bombs like in Rise of the Dragon. Like you can use bombs on one of the Snatchers even. You could attach it to their head. You could attach it like some C2 to their head or C4 or whatever. Run off and blast it and you can kill it that way too. Yeah, she's basically telling, well, she was lonely, and that's what, which is understandable. He was gone for 25 years. It wasn't like he's going to come back. She felt like she had to move on. And as I talked over all this, yeah, basically she gives you the clues of what happened, about the clues such as the pills and a leaf, which will figure in more into as you play the game. But I'm talking about, and I was going on about how to pitch a Snatcher sequel, and I'm sure people are going to hate the idea of kind of modernizing it. Yeah, the action scenes have to, you can't do that, those kind of action scenes, but where you move across there with the controller, it sucked even then. It sucked in this game, and and if you don't have a CRT, you better get used to effing up on every single action scene just about. Because like with a light gun, you can react quicker. And plus at the game, the light gun, using it on here, the stunner or whatever they called it, made it somewhat manageable. But yeah, I think I told her I'm not going to take the case right away. And again, there's like those plot points. I didn't wait for you. I'm sorry. It's like, wait for what? I mean, really, could you imagine them together, a 30-something-year-old and a 55-year-old? Somebody looks like he's still like in his mid-20s to his early 30s, with a 55-year-old woman. I mean, a lot of people even today would still look at that. They would still look at that as weird, which would be unfortunate, but and then we're gonna get to where this game starts to pick up after having to click on a bunch of shit and to progress. You really start to get into the game really starts to pick up here. Oh, he still misses her. Oh, footprints. That's not good. And then camera pans over. There's a bomb. I remember this flipped my shit when I first played this, because I first played this over 3 years ago, or about 3 years ago, because I bought it on a repro on Etsy. And it came in a nice case, too. It came in a case just like if it was released on the Saturn, had it been released back in the day. And then there you get all these action shooting scenes. And even with a gun, it's pretty hard. But with the but with the controller, it's a pain in the butt. And I mean, yeah, these were fine to do this for the time, but like in a Snatcher and Policenauts remake, these would be first person. These would be first person. I'd probably do this third person actually and make it a chase. And just make it a chase. Yeah. And after you get done shooting him a little bit, he'll back off. And then here's something that's very interesting and why this is ahead of its time. It's the last place you want to take your kids. It comes off as some innocent little bistro, but the real business is selling child VR porn. Think about it. Think about how that is ahead of its time. Chance Padwin will know what I'm talking about. Who've undergone complete sex changes. I was inside for a case once. They're called transgenders, people who have had a sex change through genetic modification. And no, I'm not being mean. He's just reading off something that's really happened. They went through. And then this little thing to figure out that adds a little bit to the game is with the mystery. It's the blood is white. And that is it's artificial blood from a frozener, which are basically genetically modified humans that were genetically modified to could withstand the rigors of living in space, and they could withstand lots of gunfire. Yeah. There's another reason why it didn't get on. The game wasn't released. Look at the dumpster. Oh, that's a potty mouth word. And now I gotta click and look around. See, for the action scenes, I would definitely do this. This would definitely be a third person. I'd set it in third person, not do point and click. Or not move crosshair. And the only way it would be like this is if there was going to be functionality for motion controls and you could, Or no, that's 4. And now the shooter's back. You found him in this alley. And even with a gun, I'm still getting shot at. Oh, I still get shot at like crazy. I mean, but like I said, playing with the controller is even worse. But yeah, basically what I was pitching was a sequel, for a Snatcher remake. I already went through some of the stuff that I would have done for a Snatcher remake. And, like I said, it would be, the story elements would be changed around. It would be set in the 2020s. It deals with a virus that kills a lot of people. The two characters, Jamie and Gillian and Jamie, get infected. They're put in cryosleep. Well, the doctor, instead of being Elijah Modnar, his name would be Eli Malloy. And they're asleep for 50 years, and it goes to the game would take place in 50 years after that, in the early to mid 2070s. Oh, and I would even have something worse than a remake for Policenauts. Instead of I'll kill you, I'd have something worse. I'd like have it say you'll be sucking me off to put you out of your misery when I'm done with you, or something. Just something really evil. But yeah, as I was saying, story elements change around. I said it'd be a virus that kills a lot of people in China, a lot of people in the United States, yada yada yada. Like I said, the two characters, Jamie and Gillian, get infected. They have to, or Gillian and Jamie get infected. The doctor, instead of his name being Elijah Modnar, he'd be called Eli Malloy. He was the one who was responsible for it, and he was connected to a biolab in China. And they're put in cryosleep while he makes a cure, and it skips ahead to the early to mid 2070s, and you'd have instead of it being Neo Kobe in Japan, like in the Snatcher, it'd be a city that's it's very dark. It'd be like I said, it'd be like New York out of the 70s or 80s, it looked like. Very gritty at night. Like everything cliche in like old TV shows where there's like smoke and stuff in the alleys. Much like this, how they got the smoke in the alleys and looking cliche. Like all the cliches that I liked from those old TV shows in like the late 80s, early 90s. And then, yeah. And because this commentary is part of me pitching up Snatcher and Policenauts remakes. And it'd be in like I said, early to mid 2070s. Jamie would be working for a pharmacy just like in the original game. You'd still have like a junker type group like in Snatcher. And he wants to basically, the character who's much older now, who'd be old as dirt, Eli Malloy, now wants to use Snatchers to take over the government within. And also it also involves computer viruses. But you know what? I would still remain true to the quick and point gameplay. and it could still be in third person. You could still you could have driving sections to each place. You know, you could even have people going after you, it could just be a, yeah, and then you could have scenes in third person, but you would still have questioning and and investigating. But honestly, I would still stick with the point and click gameplay. Honestly, yeah, I would go still stick with the point and click gameplay, and not have and only have, but I'd have driving sections where you drive to to the place where you need to go, and I'd even do chase. I'd even have like high speed chases and stuff. But now he's on his way to Beyond, Jonathan Ingram, and this commentary's got a minute left. I'm still pitching the Snatcher remake. This right here, this was like, oh, I already figured out what was going on. I already figured out who was the. I want to say, if you've not played, I already figured out who he was and what he was up to, and I was like, real subtle, Konami, real subtle, Hideo Kojima. But I mean, the voice acting is in this game. It's like typical, just basic Japanese voice actors, you know. But the guy who did the voice acting for this guy here, Tony Redwood, Kanato Shiozawa,